Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a very wet Spa-Francorchamps circuit here in Belgium for round 7, races 13 and 14 of the Mixed Energy Formula Online Racing F2 Championship. Around what is a historic circuit, a challenging circuit, and as we saw so tragically in F2 in 2019, a circuit that can still bite in the harshest possible way. Over 7 kilometres, 4.35 miles. It's challenging enough in a Formula 1 car, but with the lack of downforce that these F2 cars have and these very wet conditions, it is going to be an extremely difficult evening tonight, and it could be a very interesting evening in the championship. Only 3 more circuits being visited after tonight, and that will be Italy next week, Russia in 2 weeks, and the finale in 3 weeks' time in Abu Dhabi. There are 11 different drivers who could be leading the championship at the end of the evening, and it is currently this man, Andenge, who has a slender lead in that championship at the moment. Just 3 points ahead of Flip Flop Fish. Lee Findlay a further point behind Birussia, who's not here at the moment. He's only 6 points off the lead himself, so it is extremely close at the top in F2 at the moment. If you weren't with myself, Luke Etheridge, last week for the Hungarian round, we saw Josh M97 storm through the field in the feature race, coming from 14th, last position in that feature race, to take the victory, and he managed to get a podium as well with a third in the sprint race. Lee Findlay, teammate of Andenge in the Trident, managed to get second in both races and fastest lap in both, so he actually got more points from the 2 races than Josh did. We saw Westy carry on his great form in the sprint race with his 3rd straight podium and 2nd straight victory in the sprints, but Belgium, a very different circuit compared to what we saw last time out. Much more open, obviously, been around since the 1920s, was first used in F1 in 1950, but in a much different format to this. Only 15 laps for, only 13 laps I believe actually for the feature race, 19 corners, the longest circuit obviously in F1. As we see now, Andenge, championship leader, head towards Bonjamont. He will soon be starting his playing lap around, as I mentioned, this extremely challenging and difficult circuit. It is going to be a very interesting qualifying session. Half an hour of qualifying, obviously. You can see Andenge trying to get the straightest possible line down the pit straight now. He's coming down that straight, heading towards La Source hairpin for the first corner, taking it much easier than he would be obviously in dry conditions. All about getting a good smooth run as you head down the hill on the old starting grid, not been used for a number of years now, towards Eau Rouge and Radion, the fearsome uphill corner, as he just invalidates his lap slightly there, and you can just see the understeer he's got in that car failing to grip in these wet conditions. Still looks to be pushing pretty hard though, reaching nearly 180 miles an hour at the end of the Kendall Straight as he heads towards the Lecombe chicane. Right, left and right. This is where you will see most of the overtaking taking place during the race at the end of that long DRS straight. Downhill once again as we head towards Bruxelles. It's tight right hand hairpin where it is possible to get a good run here, heading towards the next corner, the no-name corner at turn 9. Once you've safely negotiated that, it's another one downhill towards Pouhon. In Formula 1 cars, in dry conditions, this is flat out through 10 and 11. It's definitely not going to be the case in conditions like this. You can see having to brake, change down a gear, and still Andenge not finding enough grip on these wet tyres to make it around the circuit. Now I've got this chicane at turn 12 and 13. Another corner where it is possible to overtake. Pretty much anywhere is up for grabs for overtaking around here, especially if your name's Max Verstappen. We saw him make his move on one of the Saubers around the outside of Blanchimont back in 2015 in his first season in Formula 1. Andenge now heading up towards Blanchimont. He's through the 2nd sector. He comes out of the Paul Frere corner, Stavelot heading now towards Blanchimont. 16 and 17. You've got this slight left-hander here, and then a much more severe one in these F2 cars. Again, having to change down gear, brake even slightly through that corner. Now towards the bus stop route chicane, reprofiled after the 2004 season, less of resembling a bus stop now, and then perhaps unsurprisingly heading back into the pits. It's Paulie Orange at the moment who has gone fastest in his dams, 2 minutes 16.112. That is quite a way off, probably around 15-20 seconds what we'd be expecting off dry conditions. So really struggling here, unsurprisingly. Only wet tyres in Formula 2. There are no intermediates. It's for soft and mediums what they'll be using if it is dry in the race, and I'm sure they'll certainly be hoping that is the case. They do not want the weather to be like this in the race, especially not in the sprint. That 5-lap sprint race might be a bit more sane compared to some of the other circuits, given the fact that Belgium is such a long track that it does give you extra opportunity for overtaking. But we have still seen the sprint races be absolutely manic, and it seems to be this man, Westy, who benefits from them. Not really got it going in the feature races, was third on track last time out at Hungaroring in the feature race, but dropped down to 6th because of penalties, which promoted Paulie Orange, who we've just seen on for his second F2 podium of the season. But Westy started third on the grid in the sprint race and just kept it nice and clean from there to take the victory. And a man who would have been kicking himself after last week is the Carling of Flip Flop Fish, as he gets pretty lively there, heading towards Paul Frere and Stavolo. Flip Flop Fish qualified on pole in Hungary, got himself 4 bonus points for that. So important around a track that is really difficult to overtake. Just made a few mistakes though in the feature race. That dropped him down to 8th position, which gave him pole position again for the sprint race, but he could not capitalise. Ran very wide in the early stages, ended up finishing in 7th position as Lee Findlay sets a huge margin over Paulie Orange at this stage. 2 seconds, really laying a marker down, trying to take advantage of Josh's absence at the moment. Josh is aiming to make it for the race as Flip Flop Fish moves up into 2nd place, but still 8/10 off of Lee Findlay. Westy has gone up to 3rd as well. And F2 has definitely turned into a bit of a Lee Findlay, Westy and Josh show since they joined 3 rounds ago at, I think it was Austria, wasn't it? Yeah, 3 rounds ago at Austria. Since then in Austria, Britain and Hungary, they've won all 6 races between them. As whoa, Flip Flop has gone round Rouge and Radion, just about keeping it out of the wall. Well held, sir. But that is how easy it is to just get it wrong. Taking a bit too much speed, rear end stepping out, and then you're just a passenger, and you better start praying that you don't hit the barriers. Droftas going up into 3rd position. Was near the head of the F1 Championship earlier on the season. He's begun to drop back in that, but F2 hasn't really gone as well for him as F1 has. He is currently 12th in the championship with 38 points. Had a pretty decent run last time out in the sprint race, finishing in 4th. His best result since his only podium in the feature race in Azerbaijan, so maybe this circuit will suit him a bit more in his Chiru car. There were quite a few drivers last week at the Hungaroring complaining of a lack of grip on circuit. I bet they'll be crying out to wish they had as much grip as they had in those dry conditions last time around. We're nearly a third of the way through this qualifying session. Then it's Lee Findlay from last week's pole sitter, Flip Flop Fish, Droftas, the man we're on board with, in 3rd. Last week's sprint winner, Westy, is 4th, and Paulie Orange rounding out the top 5 at the moment, but there's still a lot of quick guys yet to set a time. And one of the drivers who has actually impressed me in F2 so far since he made his debut a couple of rounds ago was Hibilu. He's been extremely consistent, managed to finish all 4 races, got himself rewarded with a couple of points last time out in Hungary, was only 1 place off getting points in the sprint race as well. Emin Aylan, I think half jokingly, said they were going for a 1-2. If the conditions stay like this for a race, you never know, they might be able to sneak a surprise result. Stranger things have happened in motor racing, especially when the race is as wet as this. At the moment we've only got 13 cars. If you cast your mind back way to 1998 Belgian Grand Prix, David Cruthell managed to take out 14 cars before we got to Eau Rouge, so hopefully that doesn't happen today. Otherwise it's going to be a very quiet feature race, and I'm not even sure how you'd even sort out the points or the sprint race, but I really doubt it's going to come to that. Hibilu just feathering the throttle slightly, having to be oh so careful out of these corners. Not sure whether the wet tyres are really suited for this. It looks as though, I'd say a few drivers might have gone out on intermediates if this was F1. You have got that dry line that you can see on the racing line at the moment. If you watch Hibilo now coming towards the bus stop chicane, he's just gone in a bit deep there. That's really going to compromise his line through the second part of that chicane. He's kept it clean though, so this should be his first lap on the board. It's going to put him slowest of those who've set a time so far, 2:19.784, and I think he's run out of fuel pretty much as he's crossed the finish line, and that is going to be a long journey back towards the pit lane. George yet to score a point after his 2 races. This is going to be fascinating seeing how he does. He's managed to finish regularly though, and with conditions looking pretty bad at the moment, it's definitely a chance to see some other guys pop up towards the front of the field. We've seen with Drofter so far in this session, I don't think he'd have expected to be 3rd in qualifying. Still a long way to go. The rain doesn't look as severe as it did earlier on, but if I can't see it drying out, to be honest, before the end of the session, but you never know if anyone is going to risk the dry tyres towards the end. You do get 4 points for pole position, and Lawrence, it says there, has got a set of softs ready, though he quickly changes his mind for that, and George goes just ahead of Lawrence, 6th place in the Prema, 2:16.887. I think he'll be reasonably happy with that. Now we're going to go on board with a debutant to the F2 series this time, Michael Pace, 02 in the ART, replacing Jonathan Cox for tonight, and that's a shame for Jonathan that he couldn't make it because he is pretty close to the top of the F2 Championship at the moment, despite not having the best results over the last few races. He's only 19 points off the lead, so he will drop back tonight. You'd expect Andenge, Westy, Lee Finley, Flip-Flop-Fish to really take advantage of that. Josh as well, if he can make his way into the session, as Michael has in fact invalidated a lap. Aylan heading up now towards Kemmel Straight, where he's going to find his teammate trundling along with no fuel in that Arden. It's a good job he wasn't a bit further back, otherwise that would have been a horrific accident on the way up. Aylan just getting past his teammate there. Won't be surprised if he tried to grab a bit of a slipstream there. Still, we've got Michael, Jompalainen, Aylan and Denge yet to set a lap time. And Jompalainen, if you remember back to the Spanish round, really burst onto the scene in F2. Was top 6 in both races in Bahrain, took the victory and pole position in Spain in the feature race, finished high up in the sprint there as well, but yet to be on the podium apart from that one win, and has not had a race where he's managed to get in the points in both rounds. I honestly thought he'd be a championship contender, and he still could be. The Univirtuosi car that we're seeing on screen at the moment, still only 12 points off, which just shows how close F2 has been at the moment. There's not really been anyone grabbing it by the horns, and now could be the time to do that with only 8 races to go, including the 2 that we're going to see tonight. And if it's wet for the race, that could really see things getting spiced up at the head of the championship. Just to remind you, it's Andenge on 91 points, Flip-Flop-Fish 88, Lee Finley 87, Borussia 85, Josh, who's not here, 79, Jompalainen 79, Jonathan Cox 72, Paulie Orange 66, Westy 64, Lawrence 54, Aylan 54. Any one of them could mathematically take the lead of the championship tonight. With the form that Lee Finley and Westy and Josh have been, it wouldn't surprise me if it's one of those who heads into Monza at the top of the standings. And Lee Finley is top of the qualifying standings at the moment, with half the session still to go. More yellow flags in Sector 2, and that is just for Hibilo, who I think at this rate might struggle to get around. He's really trundling along after running out of fuel. He was so determined to get that one lap in. In fact, it could have been even quicker. I think he just ran out before he got to the finish line, so maybe he'd have been around where George and Lawrence are. YBR has improved to 7th place. The fellow Dams driver of Paulie Orange only got 1 point so far this season, so we'll be hoping for a decent result tonight. And in weather like this, qualifying 7th could be very useful. You don't want to be stuck in the midfield. Jompalainen flying through Sector 2. Purple from the Univirtuosi driver. What can the Finn do? He's going to need to find something as Lee Finlay goes faster yet again with a 2:13.494. He's now got a 1.5 second lead at the top of these timing charts. That's plenty big enough gap for Jon Palainen to slot his car into. He now rounds the final corner, heads towards the finish line. Is this going to be good enough to put him on the front row provisionally? It is 2:14.518, but still needs to find a second if he wants to challenge Lee Finlay for pole position and give himself a chance at getting those 4 points. Lawrence definitely having a better Sector 1 than he did last time. I just wonder if the track is drying out ever so slightly. He found a second in Sector 1. We didn't see his lap, so that could have easily been a mistake from the ART driver, but if he does gain that time, that would have put him up closer to where Paulie Orange and Westy have been, and Lawrence does seem to enjoy the F2 cars more than he does the F1 cars. Still only got 1 podium so far in F2, but he's always there or thereabouts. 7th in Hungary in the feature race, 5th in the sprint, which was actually his best result in F2 since Spain, but I think part of that has been down to bad luck. He had that incident, of course, in Austria, which he admits was his own fault, where him and Aylan came together when both were on for a podium and perhaps even a possible win. We'll see now what Lawrence can do, heading towards the bus stop chicane. Again, just running a bit wide there. It's going to compromise your line, but not as important in these wet conditions. He's going to head now towards the finish line. It's 2:15.195. That is currently good enough for 6th position. As we see Flip Flop Fish has got it wrong coming out of the bus stop, and he was on for a really good time there. Would have put him up near to where Paulie Orange and Westy are, as they've moved up to 2nd and 3rd respectively. Paulie Orange just outside the 2-minute 13 for 2-minute 13. So he's really one driver I think we need to watch in this F2 championship. 2 podiums so far, always consistent. Only 1 non-score, and that coming in the sprint race last time out in Hungary. He's got 2 fastest laps so far this season, so doesn't mind picking up them bonus points. And with the championship as close as it is at the moment, it wouldn't surprise me if those fastest laps and pole positions become oh so important. So it looks like he's run out of fuel as well. They're really pushing it hard in these wet conditions to get as much pace out the car as possible. Michael Pace, another one, 10th place at the moment, so they're all struggling with fuel consumption around this circuit. F1 2019, sort of conversely to what you would think, you do seem to struggle on this game with fuel consumption a lot more in the wet conditions. As George already invalidating a lap, I can only imagine he's got it wrong coming through the bus stop chicane there. He's down in 12th at the moment. Hibilo did make it back to the pits, which will be a relief for him. As Westy, he's just slowly bringing his car round. Flip Flop invalidated. Who's going quicker at the moment? Lawrence pushing hard in the ART to try to find an improvement. If he just gets a cleaner final sector, he could really set the cat amongst the pigeons here and perhaps even challenge Paulie Orange. He's nearly half a second up on his personal best. Hopefully he'll have enough fuel to make it around. He's catching up to his teammate coming through Blanchimont. Hopefully Michael will stay out the way, and he has actually got onto the grass there to ensure he's clear. Interesting how much more confident Lawrence was through Blanchimont than we saw Van Denge earlier on. That says to me this track is really drying up. I don't think we're going to get to the stage where dry tyres are necessary. But we'll have to wait and see if anyone risks it towards the end. As Lawrence, P3 at the moment, 2:14.284. He will be impressed with that lap time. YBR coming out now on his hot lap. Glad to see YBR here tonight. Obviously with his job, does have to miss a lot of the races, but always clean when he is here. And I think that's going to reward you with points tonight. 10 minutes to go in this qualifying session. Lee Finlay looking pretty comfortable at the top at the moment. I haven't seen a notification saying that Josh has joined the session, so this could really be an evening for Lee Finlay and all these other guys towards the top of the championship to take advantage of Josh's absence. Say Hibilo here saying that he has actually forgot about fuel. It's easily done around this circuit. It's probably the one you don't want to forget about tyres and fuel the most. As Droftas has said, it's the longest in-lap they've ever done, especially in these conditions. There are just bits of sunlight appearing now in the Ardennes mountains. but it's not going to be enough for anyone to go onto dry tyres. You're going to be very brave if you do that, especially if it's going to be wet in the race. We don't know yet, and that would just make things ever so interesting, because every bit of practice is going to be necessary. As YBR heading around Puhon now, he's kept it nice and clean through there. The traffic of Lawrence just getting out of the way, thankfully. What time can YBR do? This will be good to see what sort of improvement these guys can do. If we start seeing times coming down by a second or more, then that suggests that the conditions are really drying out, and we could see someone risk slick tyres towards the end. And there you go, YBR's 2 seconds up on his personal best at the moment. Similar improvement in the final sector. Might even see the Dams driver challenge for provisional pole position. He's now heading towards Blanchimont. See how flat he is through here compared to those earlier. Only a lift, no brakes needed, no change down of gear, still doing 160 mile an hour at the apex, so much faster than we saw the drivers earlier on doing. Conditions definitely improving around this circuit. May well be one of the qualifying sessions where last man across the line gets pole position and gets the points, as YBR just gets a bit of wheel spin out the final corner, and that is 6th position for him. Aylan on an outlap. I think Lawrence has done what seems to be the common trick around this circuit of running out of fuel. They do seem to be really struggling tonight with that, and it's costing them a lot of time on their runs. George, he's looking low on fuel as well, but he always just might be wanting to get a hot lap done at the moment. 12th place, only Hibilu behind him, so let's see what George can do. Not the cleanest run through there as he gets on the curve, and that has cost him a lot of time, so maybe he'll bail on this lap into the pit lane. We'll have to wait and see. Aylan's started his hot lap. Got a few other Droftas heading back into the pits. Was pretty high up the charts earlier, but wasn't able to improve on that time, and you can see how that's cost him. He's dropped down to 8th. Flip-flop Fish, last week's pole sitter, downing 7th position at the moment, so a lot of drivers will feel they've got much to improve on in the final quarter of this session. It's still Lee Findlay at the top. He's now got Paulie Orange, Lawrence Awesti and Jompalainen behind him. Jompalainen heading up now on through Radion along the Kemmel Straight. This is one of the DRS zones here. They'll have another DRS zone heading down the main pit straight towards La Source. He's gone 4 tenths up at the moment. Josh has joined the session, so he'll be starting 14th again. He managed last to first last week in the feature race. He'll have it all to do again. His teammate will be hoping to grab first on the grid though, and he's looking good so far in the first sector. Just a slight lock up there, but he'll be able to straighten the car up and get a better exit out the corner, so I don't think that will cost him too much time. Gets on the curb, which is extremely brave to do in these conditions. Could easily snap the car around with the less grip and less downforce they have in F2, of course. Jompalainen looking pretty good at the moment. YBR going around again in the Dams, not improving this time. We'll follow him around though to the bus stop chicane and see if he heads into the pits or does find an improvement in the final sector. Looks a bit cleaner than he managed to keep it on the exit of the chicane last time, but again just lighting up those rear tyres. He does improve ever so slightly, but stays in 6th position for now. Aylan is 10th, and he's finding lots and lots of time on these wet tyres. If they're just keeping a clean lap, they are challenging towards the top end here. Are we going to see the Arden get towards the front row with 5.5 minutes to go in this session? Rounds the final corner, still finding hard to find the grip out of that last corner, and he's in 4th place, slotted in just behind Lawrence at the moment. Jompalainen's gone deep, very deep into the chicane. We've got yellow flags out, and I think that's for YBR, who's binned it on the exit of Radion. Easily done when you're coming over the hill. The car just goes light. Looks as though he's tried to save it and not been able to, so YBR 7th position at the moment. That's the best he will be able to do. Aylan found 2 seconds on his lap. Jompalainen getting it wrong, and he's dived into the pits. Are we going to see anyone risk the dry tyres in this session? We've got a few on the chart showing it, but rain definitely still coming down, so it will be a very brave call for anyone to head out. Flip-flop Fish has invalidated this lap, so he's going to get another couple of runs, but that will be it for him with such a long circuit. You can't afford to leave it too late in qualifying and keep invalidating laps all the time. But most of the guys now towards the back end of this qualifying field out at the moment. Hibilu, not really set a representative time after running out of fuel earlier on. We've got yellow flags. Is that for Paulie Orange just slowing it down to get clean air, I feel? See it all getting very tight and twisty. It amazes me around a 7-kilometre track when we've got 13 cars, how they all seem to be occupying the same bit of tarmac. There's Droftas there lighting up his rear tyres coming out of the bus stop. That's one way to gain a bit of temperature in those tyres. But Paulie in second position at the moment. Lee Findlay out on a hot lap as well, just ahead, as he now comes up through Eau Rouge and Radion. We'll see what he can do in the Trident in the first sector. Has been a revelation since he joined in F2. Took the win in Austria in the feature race in his first race. That is his only win so far, but 3 podiums in a row, 3 second places in a row as well, and 3 fastest laps in each of them races has really helped his championship challenge at the moment. He's gone purple in the first sector. This circuit is definitely drying out, but not enough to make the dry tyres feasible at all, I don't feel. George has gone out on an outlap on those medium tyres. This is going to be interesting. You can hear him barely touching the throttle there. He does not want to go anywhere near the throttle pedal with these medium tyres on. The circuit is nowhere near dry enough, I don't think, and he's having to take it very easy just to keep it out of the wall. Well, if it stops raining now, we do know how quickly it does dry up on this game, but yeah, barely touching the steering wheel there, and the car just drifting wide. So that is the answer we were looking for to whether it's going to be ready for the dry tyres, and I think the inevitable happened there. He's done well to keep it out of the barrier for as long as he did on those tyres, but Lacombe proving too much for the framer, and he is in the barriers just waiting for Jon Palainen to get past. He's worth a shot when you're towards the back of the field, but dry tyres really not the order of the day at the moment. You want to be on these blue striped wet tyres. You want to be in the Trident of Lee Findlay at the moment, because he's just finding so much more pace than everyone else. He's a second up on his personal best. Flip Flop Fish gets a 2:12.303. So Lee Findlay, who was that slight mistake from the bus stop chicane, going to cost him pole position. No, 47 thousandths ahead of Flip Flop, and the Trident is back on P1. Paulie Orange, what time can he find? He's not improved as much as some of the other drivers as Droftas goes up into third place. Paulie Orange, he's just getting ready for another lap, and Denge has invalidated. So the championship leader down in 11th at the moment. He's only going to get one more shot at this. Hibilu, he's finding some extra time. He'll just be aiming to get ahead of George and possibly Andenge and Michael. We'll have to wait and see what he does. Doesn't seem to have the confidence there through Blanchimont that we saw of some of the drivers earlier. Big amounts of understeer, making me wonder if he's running more of a dry weather setup, because his car definitely does look as confident through these corners as some of the others we've seen, but it's still enough to move him up into 12th place for now. Westy, he found the big time. He's moved up into 3rd, so a lot of these drivers will be needing to keep it clean. Aylan's in the pits. He's thinking 7th place the best he can do. George overtaking Lawrence. Don't want to see any racing or collisions going on here, boys, through Blanchimont, and thankfully George pulls out of the way. He's really struggling on those tyres. We've had a spinner. That is Flip Flop Fish coming out of No Name, similar to where Pastor Maldonado lost it a couple of years ago. Doesn't want to get in the way of any of these drivers that are coming through. So Flip Flop Fish in the Carlin, he's not going to be able to do any better than second. We are obviously seeing lots of improvements from these drivers at the moment. In fact, I think Flip Flop is another one of those to run out of fuel. So Lee Findlay, he's going to be first one of these guys to cross the finish line and finish his qualifying session. He's going faster yet again. Is the Trident going to be first man in the 2-minute 11s in this session? Is that going to be enough to secure him the 4 bonus points, which would put him tied with Andenge at the top of the championship going into the feature race and the sprint race? I said it was extremely close. That is just proving my point. Lawrence, 6th place, the best he's able to do. I think he may have had an accident at the top of Eau Rouge. Lee Findlay lighted up the rear tyres through the final corner. It's 2:11.578. Droftas has gone deep into the chicane. All the cars are coming through. We've got Michael Pace not too far behind. What can Droftas do in the Cheroux? He goes up into 3rd position. Michael headed into the pits. Paulie Orange stays in 5th place. So Westy, he's improving. Got Jompalainen not too far back as well. And Denge clinches 6th place at the depth. He'll be fairly happy with that, given how that qualifying session went for him and how qualifying tends to have gone for him in general lately. What can Westy do in the MP Motorsport car? He's going to join Lee Findlay on the front row for now, unless Jompalainen can find some big chunks of time in this final sector. We've got Hibilu heading towards the finish line. He's invalidated his lap. George still giving it a go on those dry tyres, but with the damage, unsurprisingly not able to gain anything. Jompalainen now running towards the finish line. Is this going to be enough to challenge the front runners? No, it is not. Only 6th place. There we see a sign that says DRS has been enabled. So maybe this qualifying session was a couple of minutes longer. The dry tyres would have been worth it for George. But in the end, he's got no grip. He's got no front wing. And he's got no chance of improving. He will be starting 13th. But it is this man, Lee Findlay, taking his first pole position of... No, his second pole position, sorry. Got pole on his debut in Austria. And that is a bonus 4 points. That will be well appreciated for him. But Westy said the feature races haven't gone to plan for him. He's got a great chance starting in second. And let's not forget Josh. He has twice come back from the back of the grid in these F2 cars to win. Once in a sprint race in Austria and once last time out around the Hungaroring circuit. And it's a lot easier to do that here. So we'll have to wait and see what he can do from 14th position. So here we go then. The qualifying standings from that session. It's Lee Findlay who gets the bonus 4 points and the pole position. Westy, the only driver to get within half a second, is in second place. Flip Flop Fish, another great qualifying session from the American. Third, Droftas. He'll be happy with his performance here tonight in 4th. Paulie Orange is 5th. Jompalainen 6th. Championship leader Andenge 7th. Lawrence in 8th. Alan 9th. YBR 10th. Michael Pace 11th on his debut. Hibilu in 12th. And George 13th and last after the dry tyre gamble didn't work for him. Let's not forget as well, Josh will be starting in 14th position in what we'll have to see what the conditions are going to be like for the next 13 laps at the feature race here in Belgium. And unfortunately for these guys, it's going to be wet again. So if you have got a wet setup, it'll be looking very good at the moment. We wait now for everyone to get ready. Hopefully that means Josh has been able to put a setup forward. So I'll have to see what is happening here. Everyone getting ready. No formation lap. No chance for them to get any more used to the conditions. Thankfully they've had a chance in the qualifying session to test the car out. Let's see who's going to take the victory here in the feature race. Could be 13 laps of just surviving for a few of these drivers. It's going to be a good one, ladies and gentlemen. As the lights coming on now here at Spa. Who's going to take the victory? As the lights go out, we are racing at the feature race in Belgium. It is a good start from Lee Findlay. Everyone getting away cleanly at the moment. Who's going to be in the lead into turn 1? It is going to be Lee Findlay as Flip Flop Fish trying it down the inside of Westy at the moment. Westy should get a better exit off the final corner, however. Everyone has got through La Source cleanly, which is great to see, obviously. Jompalainen's moved up a couple of places as he's managed to get past Droftas, who hasn't had the best start, but it's still Lee Findlay, Westy, Flip Flop Fish leading at this point in the race. Josh always making good starts. He's up to 10th. He's actually dropping way down the field. Josh has got it wrong. Coming through O'Rouge there. Thankfully for him, he's able to continue, but he is now down in 14th and he's going to have to work his way back up again. Alan has got damage and Josh has got damage, so not sure whether those two collided. We'll have to wait and see. That's the danger when you're starting at the back. You always get involved in accidents. And Denge all over the back of Jompalainen, heading now down towards Bruxelles. Is he going to be brave enough on the brakes to have a go? Maybe in the dry conditions he would. I don't think he went for it, but Jompalainen running way wide in the Univirtuosi, and he now drops back to 5th position. But Lee Findlay a second ahead of Westy already. Don't know whether DRS is going to be enabled at this point. Looks to be raining pretty heavy once again. It may dry up in the final few minutes. There'll be no DRS obviously in these wet conditions. Jon Palainen's now dropping back even more. Really struggling on this opening lap after such a great start. Was looking in 4th place, looking as though he could challenge for the top 3. He's now down in 8th. Hibilu has gained a few places as Josh fighting his way back up the field with that damage. Could be a very long feature race in these conditions. He is now in 30th position and George will be his next target. Gaps appearing all throughout the field already in these early stages. But Lawrence 5th, Droftas all over the back of him, who's just got it slightly wrong there. Coming through that corner is Paulie Orange. Is he going to be brave enough in these wet conditions to ever go round the outside at Blanchimont? This would be a fantastic move if the Dams driver can pull it off. Droftas gives him plenty of room and Paulie Orange takes that 6th position, holding it off round the outside. Fantastic move from a fantastic driver. Hibilu nearly into the back of Jon Palainen there as YBR tries to take advantage of that. He's battling over the lower points. Michael Pace seeing what he can do. We're only at the end of lap 1 and it is Lee Finlay with a 1 second lead from Westy. Flip Flop Fish not too far back, and then you've got a bit of a gap to Andenge, Lawrence, Droftas and Paulie Orange still battling through La Source. It's very close from 6th down to the back of the grid. So we could still see Josh and Aylan pick up a few points here, especially if there are some retirements. Everyone is through the first lap and is still in this race. It's only Josh and Aylan who I believe have damage at this moment in time, as Paulie Orange is now in the slipstream of Droftas coming down the Camel Straight. Droftas not really bothering to defend at this moment in the race. Paulie Orange is going to have to be later on the brakes than his Welsh rival. Droftas holding it off around the outside. He's just got it wrong coming through Lacombe, and Jon Palainen's going to say thank you very much. He takes that 7th place off him, and Droftas could lose another one here in the Cheroux as YBR tries to get himself down the inside. And indeed, YBR takes 8th position. Very opportunistic from Jon Palainen and YBR as Droftas, I think, nearly went into the back of the Dams car there. You don't want to do any damage. I think Josh and Aylan are definitely trying to hold it off until the pit stop, which, if they have to make one, of course, for dry tyres, we'll have to wait and see, as that is Droftas who has gone off the circuit there. Josh doing very well to avoid him. I think he was trying to line up an overtake on Michael Pace, but was unable to do so, as he suddenly found a Cheroux right where he wanted to place his car. But Josh doing well despite the damage. Only 1 place off the points at this moment in time. He obviously wants to make his way up through the field as quickly but as cleanly as possible. He's now going to have a move on the ART. That should be straightforward. That is 10th place. But Michael's going to get the cutback. He's well entitled to. This battle could go on for a while. Bit of real wubbing between the two. Josh ends up on the curve. He's got a better exit. And I think Michael is going to have to concede in the end. So Josh up into 10th place. Despite that damage, he is in the points. So you can see there, Michael's just gone into the back of him. Josh obviously having to lift more because he's got less downforce on that car at the moment. Thankfully, no damage done as Josh has gone very deep into the bus stop chicane. He gets himself a 3-second time penalty for corner cutting. I think kind of saw that one coming. We've seen this a few times from Josh in F2. He does seem to pick up the odd penalty. Nearly cost him last time out in Hungary. Didn't in the end. It could do today if things stay really close together. But out in front, Lee Finlay extending that gap is now 1.4 seconds over Westy. He's pulling away from Flip Flop Fish slightly, and Paulie Orange is trying to get back on the back of Lawrence for 5th position. You've got Andenge in 4th. He'll be pretty happy with how he's doing at the moment. Much better run after the last few races, where despite still maintaining his championship lead, I think he'll admit the sprint at Silverstone he finished in 7th, and Hungary only picking up 1 point over the 2 races. Not what you want to be doing if you're in a championship fight, as Josh has moved up another place past Hibilu. He is into 9th position now. Still raining hard at this Spa circuit. Be interested to see what the weather conditions are like for the sprint race, whether we end up getting some more rain. I'm sure these drivers will just be crying out for some dry weather now for that sprint race. Chaotic enough without any wet weather, as Finlay must have made a mistake somewhere on this lap. That 1.5 second lead has been halved by Westy, who is dragging Flip Flop Fish along with him. So all Lee Finlay really had to do, you feel, was keep it clean. Things might have just got a bit more interesting at this stage in the race then. Westy yet to win a feature race, yet to finish in the top 5 in a feature race, despite finishing 3rd on track last time out. The sprint races have been much more kind to him, with wins in Britain and Hungary and a 2nd place in Austria, and that's how he's amassing his points. Lee Finlay just seems to be amassing his points with consistency at the moment. He'll be hoping for his 2nd win, and Flip Flop Fish, after a disappointing performance, I'm sure he'll agree, last time out after qualifying on pole in Hungary, to only finish 8th and 7th in the 2 races. Not what he'll have wanted. He's looking good for a podium at the moment. He'll definitely fancy more though. These 3 drivers are really going to be up there when it comes to the championship at the end of the season, as Droftas and Hibilu battling through the bus stop chicane. Hibilu has now dropped outside the points. Droftas trying to recover after that earlier off. He is back into 10th position, running wide slightly. Westy really having to push hard at the moment. He got a penalty at the top of the hill, and Lee Finlay got a better exit, so just dropping back behind a 2nd. A reminder, obviously, no DRS at this stage in the race because of the wet conditions. Biggest battle in the field is for this final point. You can see 5 cars line astern at the moment. Droftas, Hibilu, Michael, George, Alan. Great opportunity for Michael and George to get their first points of the season at the moment. Here we are now on board with the sole Kramer in this race, thankfully with appropriate tyres on for the weather conditions. After his earlier attempts at qualifying, maybe if the rain had just stopped a few minutes earlier, that could have been genius, and he could have been on pole position, as Josh has got past YBR, so that damage doesn't seem to be affecting him too much. He's in 8th place at the moment. Jon Palainen, his next target for 7th, and being in the top 8 means you will benefit from the reverse grid. If you finish 5th to 8th, you will find yourself promoted higher up the grid for the sprint race. So I wouldn't count Josh out yet for getting a victory, especially in that sprint race at the end of this feature race. But you can just see he's got a bit of understeer. He'll be hoping that it stops raining and he can get a front wing changed, get some dry tyres on, and really challenge those at the front of the field. Lap 4 then, coming towards the end of it. Lee Finlay has managed to get away from Westy on this gap. Flip Flop Fish though, still remaining within half a second of the MP car. Westy can't relax for a second, because the American will be ready to pounce if he makes a mistake. As we say that, you can just hear the wheel spin as they're coming out of these corners, really struggling to keep the power down at the moment. Further back, and Denge sort of running a race on his own at the moment in 4th place. Lawrence wishes he was on his own. He's got Paulie Orange to keep behind. We know how quick the Dams driver can be. Can he get another podium? He'll have to go some at the moment. 9 seconds off a Flip Flop Fish at the moment with 9 laps remaining. Alan getting past George on the run down towards La Source. Hibilu and Michael battling, and Michael really in the slipstream now of the Arden, just ahead of him. It's not looking like a great race for the Pink Panthers at the moment. Hibilu getting a wheel on the grass. Crew O'Rouge just braving off in the dry, never mind when it's as damp as it is at the moment, but it seems to have worked for him taking that line. He's just pulled away from Michael ever so slightly, and he'll be happy with that. Could still pick up some points in this race. I am impressed as Michael nearly puts it into the back of Hibilu. Got his braking all wrong there into La Source, just getting caught out by the slipstream slightly. Thankfully managed to avoid contact by just skipping over the chicane, but he stays in 12th place for now. As I was saying, surprise there's been no retirements at this race. They are showing some good quality driving. I think as these tyres begin to wear more towards the end, we may see a few more spins and accidents. Still think it is only Alan and Josh who have any damage at the moment, and Josh seems to be coping with that better than Alan, who's just managed to pass George on the previous lap. So while Lee Finlay has escaped slightly from these two, as Westy's got it wrong there coming out of Paul Frere and Stavolo, this could give Flip Flop Fish the opportunity. He needs to get right underneath the rear wing of the car ahead, having to lift through Blanchimont. I'll get the telemetry up just so you can get the idea. They're definitely having to take it easier than they were towards the end of qualifying, and that's just helping Westy, I think, maintain that second place at the moment. He doesn't look as confident in the final sector as the car behind him, as Lee Finlay setting the fastest lap of the race with a 2:15.451. It's looking like he's going to do the hat-trick in the feature race. Can he get 2 podiums out of 2 though, like he did last week, like Josh did last week? Have to wait and see, obviously, for the sprint race, as Michael has managed to get past Hibilu now, completely misses the chicane, lets Hibilu by, but the stewards, despite his kindness, aren't looking too kindly upon that move, and he's got himself a 10-second penalty for corner cutting. Might be able to get that removed in the stewards after the race. It just depends whether they feel he's gained an advantage, and that has allowed Alan to catch up to these guys, and George as well. Droftas has got away from these at the moment. Thankfully, he avoided any damage after his early incident, and he is catching up to the back of YBR and Josh at the moment, as Alan's got a much better run there through Radion than Michael Pace, who's just not going to be able to defend from the Arden car. He's going to be ahead before we get to the braking zone from Lacombe, and the Arden's now running line astern in 11th and 12th. There'll be extra downforce on Michael's car. He's got all his front wing. He wasn't giving that position up, was he? I thought the move was all done, but the ART proving me wrong. Michael up into 12th position for now. Battle for 5th and 6th place, and now has an extra bit of incentive. These are Kurt and Denge up, and Jon Palainen heading towards the back of them. So we see Paulie Orange running very wide and getting himself the penalty for that. Been a lot of penalties in this race, unsurprising perhaps because of the weather. We're still only on lap 6 out of 13. We've now got Andenge, Lawrence, Paulie Orange, Jon Palainen not too far behind. Be interested to see whether Josh can catch these guys up as well. The gap to the leader seems to be maintaining at about 18-19 seconds at the moment. I think it's going to be a challenge. 8th might be the best Josh can hope for, and it could all be a bit worse because of them penalties. If he finishes in 8th, he will be starting on pole in the sprint race. If he finishes 9th, he'll be starting 9th. So the gap in points might only be 2 points, as Lawrence has gone very deep there into the chicane. We've got Flip Flop Fish heading into the pit lane. All these wet tyres wearing out extremely quickly around this Belgian circuit. Flip Flop Fish into the pits. Another set of wets, the only tyres they can really put on. Josh and Droftas coming in as well, so Josh will be able to get that damage repaired. We've got Michael and Alan coming in as well. Let's put another fresh set of the Blue Wall wet tyres on. So Flip Flop Fish will come out in 9th place. Be interested to see how much time he can gain on Lee Finlay now before we see them make their pit stops. Flip Flop coming out just ahead of Hibilu and George, and I think that could be crucial so that he doesn't get held up. Lawrence and Paulie Orange really battling closer than they have been at any point, I feel, in this race. This is now a battle for 4th place, with Van Denge currently occupying the last podium place because of Flip Flop Fisher's pit stop. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here. Paulie Orange all over the back of Lawrence. We see Alan, he's coming to the pits as well. So quite a few guys choosing to pit on that lap. I can't imagine it's going to be long before Lee Finlay, Westy and Denge, and all these others towards the front of the field that haven't pitted, make their one and only pit stop in this race. Paulie Orange just following Lawrence around at the moment, waiting for his opportunity, maybe hoping he can jump him in the pit stops, and feeling it's not worth the risk at this point in the race. We are on lap 7 out of 13, 6 and a bit laps to go for the leaders, as Paulie Orange has got a much better exit out of Stavolo there than Lawrence. He's just not able to do anything about it. Lawrence placing the ART in exactly the right places, and Jon Palainen is really closing up to the back of these. He's got the gap down to less than a second now, obviously because of that. Are we going to see a few more of these guys dive into the pits? And Denge heading in then from 3rd place. He will drop back behind Flip Flop Fish, you'd imagine. I'm interested to see what sort of pace Josh can do now. That front wing change obviously costing him time. He's dropped back behind Droftas, down in 12th place. How many points can he pick up today? that notification at the bottom of the screen will be a big help. Obviously, YBR getting a 5-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Kabilu in as well. Flip Flop Fish has jumped Andenge, as you'd expect. He was quite a bit ahead of him. So Andenge will come out in 8th position. You see George staying on circuit, nearly running off track there. George at the moment in the Premier in 7th. He's still yet to pit, of course. The top 5 still yet to pit. Flip Flop Fish leading out of those that has pitted. But surely Lee Findlay, Westy, Lawrence, Paulie Orange, John Paline, and it won't be long before they're bringing these F2 cars into the pit lane. As Paulie Orange, I'm surprised he didn't go for it last lap and try and get the undercut, as it seems to be really bucketing it down here. And Lawrence has actually been caught out maybe by the slightly heavier rain, just running wide, heading into that no-name corner. He's down into 4th place now. Is he able to get a run towards Puhon? That's not really an overtaking opportunity in the dry. Never mind in the wet, as it really starts to come down around this circuit now. Rain definitely getting heavier, so any hope of transitioning to slick tyres at the end and doing your pit stop that way have gone well out the window for these guys. So Paulie Orange takes 3rd position. That will be 4th. Will be 5th, sorry, after the pit stops. See how much more pace he's got, because he did look to be being held up by Lawrence. Jon Palainen's just keeping it at about a second at the moment, as Andenge shows he can overtake through Puhon when you've got much better tyres than the car ahead of you. He moves into 7th position, 10.5 seconds behind Flip Flop Fish. That earlier pit stop really works well for the Carlin car at the moment. Can he gain any time on Westy and Lee Findlay, because he wasn't too far off the back of Westy before the pit stops. They've both carried on for another lap. Paulie Orange and Lawrence battling out of the bus stop. Lawrence getting much better traction there coming out of that corner. And with 5 laps to go, he retakes 3rd position. Jon Palainen stays in 5th as well. Paulie Orange running wide there. All this battling's just allowed the Virtuosi car to get onto the back of these. And maybe he smells his first podium since winning at the feature race in Spain. Flip Flop Fish now setting the fastest lap of the race. Didn't see any more pit stops that lap, so maybe some of these guys are going to try and get to the end, because I can't quite remember. I know you have to do a compulsory pit stop in the dry conditions in F2 as you do in F1, but I can't remember if you have to do it in the wet conditions. I am getting up the F2 regulations now, because I have a sneaking suspicion even in... There is a compulsory pit stop, but it doesn't say anything here, even if it is a wet race. So I feel like all these guys are going to have to pit, even though it is wet. We'll wait and see, because that is what caught Andenge out last time. He didn't use the right sets of tyres, and he got disqualified. So let's see what happens here. Jon Palainen in 5th place at the moment. Paulie Orange back behind Lawrence after just making a slight mistake. This battling is really going to cost them time to Andenge, who is now trying to close up the Flip Flop Fish, but with 5 laps to go, it's going to be hard to close that 10-second gap. Drofdas finds himself on the back of YBR, and he's got Josh quickly closing in, so I think a couple of points still on the cards for Drofdas and Josh. Michael Pace further back has got Hibilo all over the back of him. These seem to be inseparable at the moment, and Alan currently in last place. They said they wanted a 1-2, but they failed to reverse 1-2. Might be more feasible for the Arden team. Unfortunately, at the moment, it looks like their prediction is correct. Still got some time to go, though. We are on lap 9 of this race. Lee Findlay and Westy carrying on again on these wet tyres. They're finding plenty of grip at the moment. Lawrence really having to fight hard, though, to keep Paulie Orange and Jon Palainen behind him. He's running line astern for 3rd, 4th and 5th, and you can just see how they're drifting away out of the bus stop chicane there. Seems to work for them. None of them finding good grip at the moment. What are appalling conditions as Paulie Orange nearly goes into the back of Lawrence there, and that's all the invitation Jon Palainen needed to take that 4th place. Bit of a driver error there, just locked up the tyres. You heard the squeal. Had to take to the grass to avoid Lawrence. Got himself a penalty, which I found slightly harsh, but he has dropped now to 5th place, and Lawrence getting a bit of breathing space as Josh has managed to get past Drofdas, so he's back into the points in 10th position. and he's really flying at the moment. Fastest lap of the race, 2:14.547. He's back on the rear of YBR. He's got past him already. Just looking how high you can get up are these guys who have already pitted, I should say. YBR will be able to catch. Andenge is going to be a task. We'll have to wait and see. He's definitely flying at this point in the race, is Josh. He's really enjoying now that he's got all the bits of carbon fibre that an F2 car is meant to have. He was hoping to go from last to first. I think the sprint race, he's going to be one to watch out for. Lawrence still holding on to that third place. Can he get his first podium since Spain? Can Jon Palainen get his first podium since Spain? In fact, no, Lawrence's was Bahrain. It was the other ART of Jonathan Cox on the podium in Spain. So it's been a while since these were near the front of an F2 race, taking advantage of these wet conditions. But I'm fairly sure you do have to pit even in a wet race in F2. We'll have to wait and see if anyone does dive towards the pits in the final lap. I could be wrong, it has happened before, but I'd be surprised to see that many drivers pitting if it isn't something that the game does force you to do. As we've seen now, Paulie Orange all over the back of Jon Palainen. Again, he seems to get much better exits than the cars ahead coming through Stavolo, but he's just catching him up at Blanchimont too quickly almost for his own good, as he has to lift off and ruins all his momentum. Then he has no chance of getting him into the bus stop chicane, as this time Lawrence and Paulie Orange do head into the pits. They're going to have 3 laps remaining. Where are these guys going to come out relative to Andenge, who pitted much earlier on and has had clear traffic, of course. I think he's going to be well clear, so he'll be looking good to take 4th position at the moment. Flip Flop Fish now setting the fastest lap of the race. Where's he going to be in the grand scheme of things once Lee Finley and Westy pit? We'll have to wait and see. Andenge comes across the line. George still staying out on circuit. Josh trying to get around the outside of him. He'll get much better traction as George spins up the wheels there, nearly collides with Josh, as Josh is up to 8th place. You can see how much this battling has cost Lawrence and Paulie Orange, because they've lost out. Well, one of them's lost out to Josh. Paulie Orange is now down in 9th position. It's going to have YBR all over him, and in fact with the extra momentum, YBR and Droftas take Paulie Orange. So he's in that pit stop period. I'm not sure if he had damage or a penalty, because he's lost 5 places back on Lawrence. He was right on the back of the ART. He's now down in 11th. Lawrence is in 6th, and he's going to have Josh for company sooner rather than later, I'd assume. So 6th place still looking good for Josh at the moment, and it could be better if those top 3 guys decide not to pit. We'll have to see if their tyres last. I think this lap or next we will see them dive into the pit lane. Jon Palainen 3rd place at the moment. Runny's on his own. How much pace has he got in that Univirtuosi car? He was on the back of Lawrence and Paulie Orange, but didn't look to be being held up by them. He should definitely gain time on one of them, with Paulie Orange being stuck in a traffic jam at the moment. He's got George, YBR, Droftas ahead of him. As you can see him getting very close to the back of Droftas at the moment. The rear light's pretty much all you can see of that Shabu car at this moment. And now that these have all pitted apart from George, he's sort of the cork in the bottle, as his wet tyres are just losing tread at this stage in the race. And he's really struggling to keep the car on the circuit at the moment. Paulie Orange getting past Droftas, and he's back up into the points, and I don't think it's going to be long before YBR's making his way past George. A few connection issues between the two of them there, and George is still ahead of YBR. Paulie Orange getting ahead of Droftas for 10th and 11th place, as Josh tries to close up onto the back of Lawrence. 2.4 seconds with 2 laps to go is definitely doable. Have to wait and see, as Droftas gets a 10-second penalty for exceeding track limits. That was on the entry into the bus stop. I've seen it happen quite often on the exit. We've not really seen it on the entry before, and I think that's any chance he had of getting points today out the window after what looked like such a promising start to the race, running just outside the podium places. He's going to be looking to get any points today, and obviously we'll be starting way down the field for the sprint race as well. Well, lap 12, and we haven't really talked about these two because they've just been running on their own for the last 5 or 6 laps. Lee Findlay 5 seconds ahead of Westy at the moment, who is nearly 14 seconds ahead of Jon Palainen. Those 3 drivers yet to pit still. We'll find out very shortly whether the game does force you to take a compulsory pit stop in F2 in wet conditions. Check the regulations and it does say you do have to take a pit stop, but it doesn't mention whether you don't have to do that in wet conditions. All it says is you don't have to use dry tyres, obviously, if it's raining. I mean, you can do. George did earlier, but it doesn't end too well. George in 8th place at the moment. I think YBR must have made a mistake somewhere because he has now dropped way off the back of these guys. He was challenging with George. He's now down in 11th, so if he keeps it clean, he might still get points because of Grofdas's penalty. We'll have to wait and see. Lee Findlay carries on. He's now heading towards the final lap of this race. Westy is second at the moment. The game seems to be letting them continue, so it's looking like you don't have to make that pit stop in the wet conditions. Jon Palainen, will he dive into the pits? I'll be surprised if he does at this point. Has this cost Flip Flop Fish and Andenge and Lawrence a potential good result for these guys here? We'll have to wait and see. Lee Findlay and Westy might have just played this absolutely brilliantly. Flip Flop Fish is 2.7 seconds behind Jon Palainen, but a much fresher tyre, so that is going to be a battle to watch. George and Paulie Orange nearly coming together through Blanchimont. Paulie Orange has got so much more pace. He's having to go onto the curb, onto the grass. Doesn't matter which bit of racetrack he's having to use. He's determined to get past the Prema. George braking as late as possible. He's going to have the inside line, but a much compromised exit. Surely Paulie Orange is going to have to grip. Drofdas fancies a bit of this as well. We're 3 wide going on to the final lap of the race here for these guys. And it's Drofdas who comes out ahead. Paulie Orange looked certainty to gain a place in that. And in the end, him and George have lost a position. Great driving from Drofdas. He's up into 8th position. We've just 1 lap to go at the moment. Paulie Orange still not giving up. Getting past George. George hanging on to 10th position for now. It should stay there with only 1 lap to go. The YBR making that mistake earlier. The battle for 6th and 7th place on track between Lawrence and Josh. 1.7 seconds, so didn't gain as much on that last lap as he would have liked to. So I think 7th is going to be the best Josh can do, unless he really tries something brave on this final lap. Likewise with Flip Flop Fish and Jon Palainen. He's got that gap down to about 1.5 seconds, but not many more corners to go for the Univirtuosi to hold on for what would be a well-deserved podium here. Flip Flop Fish is really pushing the car hard, drifting slightly. The rain does seem to have eased ever so slightly. Similar intensity now to what it was at the start of the race. Maybe that's why the drivers are just pushing a bit harder, and maybe that's what's allowed these on the wet tyres to keep it clean for a bit longer now that they are drying out on the older tyres. And it's going to be Lee Findlay to come across the finish line. He takes the victory here in F2 in the feature race. Resty is going to get his first feature race podium in 2nd position. Jon Palainen will come to cross the finish line in 3rd place. Oh, Willie, he's got a front left puncture there. So Jon Palainen's really going to struggle to make it towards the finish line. I think he's just going to do it. Flip Flop Fish has actually dropped quite a bit back, so Jon Palainen takes 3rd. Flip Flop Fish is 4th, and Denge will be 5th. Josh 7th, Lawrence 6th, so we'll wait to see Andenge come across the line now in 5th position. Lawrence, can he take that 5th place on penalties? No, he can't. Josh ends up in 7th. Drofdas is going to come across the line to finish in 8th position, but he does have a 10-second penalty to get added on to his time, which may end up dropping him outside of the points. And there we see Drofdas in 8th position. Paulie Orange ends up jumping him in the end. George comes across the line in 8th place to take his first points in F2. Did a great job to keep those tyres lasting towards the end. And I wonder what Flip Flop Fish and Denge and some of those others that pitted are thinking at this moment in time. It definitely cost Flip Flop Fish a chance at getting on the podium. Lee Findlay, though, put the perfect performance in to take his 2nd victory in F2 from pole position. It was a great performance from him, and he will be starting from 8th, obviously, for the sprint race. We now wait for the podium. There is Lee Findlay in the Trident. Westigate in second, and Jompalainen back towards his old best form. Great tyre management. I've seen him do that time and time again. Keep his tyres in good condition. Not quite the ideal way to come across the finish line with a puncture, but he held on for third place in the end. So it was Lee Findlay taking the victory. Westy getting his first feature race podium. Jompalainen coming from 6th place to finish in 3rd. Flip Flop Fish 4th place and a fastest lap. He'll be happy with that after disappointed Hungaroring. And Denge in 5th. Lawrence 6th. Josh, what could have been for him if he'd have not got involved in an incident on lap 1? He finished in 7th place. George will be 8th and he will have pole position for the sprint race. Paulie Orange 9th. Droftas rounded out the points. Then YBR, Aylin, Hibilu and Michael Pace were the rest of the finishers. All 14 cars finished that feature race. If the conditions are like this in the sprint race, I will be very surprised if I'm saying the same thing in about 10 to 15 minutes time. So yeah, tyre management winning the day there for the top 3 drivers. I did think it was like F1 where you don't have to pit if the conditions are wet, but a few of the drivers did seem to feel like they'd have a better chance, and Flip Flop Fish obviously getting the fastest lap did only finish 10 seconds I should say, behind Westy in the end, so he did a great job of catching up to the field, but it turns out being on the wet tyres all throughout that race was the better strategy. If you could keep your tyres in good enough condition, not going to have to worry about any wet weather and hitting any puddles in this. It is now beautiful sunshine here at Spa for the race. I imagine they're all going to be on the soft tyres for the sprint race. This is definitely going to be one to watch. We're going to have Josh trying to get his first win of this weekend. He has won at every F2 meeting he has appeared at so far. Is that going to be the case today? He starts in second as the lights come on. 5 lights are on. Then when they go out, we will be underway here at the sprint race in Belgium. Josh getting a good start off the line, instantly getting ahead of George before they've even got to La Source. So it is George fighting back there. There's contact between the two of them. George definitely not giving up. They're going to be side by side on the run down towards Eau Rouge, and Lawrence is going to try and get himself involved in this as well. It's Josh, Lawrence and George. Someone is going to have to back out, otherwise we're going to see a crash, and George has tapped Lawrence nearly into the wall there, but Lawrence staying ahead of George at the moment. He is in second place. We had some incident down at the back. There is YBR off, Hibilu and Aylin both involved in that. Not sure if Paulie Orange was as well. So 4 cars, I think, suffering damage at Eau Rouge there. But it's Josh in the lead of this race at the moment. George in second place. He's definitely feisty on this first lap. Lawrence in third. Won't be too happy, I think, with some of his driving from his fellow admin, as George has ran very wide there into the hairpin. Is that going to give Lawrence the chance he needs? No. And Denge is 4th. Lee Findlay up into 5th place. Flip Flop Fish 6th. Westy 7th. Jompalainen 8th. Only the top 8. Remember that get points in this sprint race. George really defended hard from Lawrence. This is exactly what Josh will have wanted, I feel. Getting past George early along and using his superior pace to just streak away from the field. It's what Westy has done over the last 2 races. Got yellow flags again. That is Andenge who is dropping down the field. He has spun. So he has dropped down into 10th place. 5 drivers getting involved in incidents on this first lap. But I don't think the Trident will have any damage. Have to wait and see if the camera angle ever decides to change from this one. No, looks as though his car is undamaged, but it's Josh 2.2 seconds ahead already at the end of lap 1. It's all kicking off behind. Hibilu has retired from the session. He has dropped it on that barrier there coming out of Stavolo. So his race has over. It's really not gone well for the Arden team here tonight, but it is Josh in the lead of this race. We've got a car spinning off in the background. That's Droftas nearly going off circuit as Lawrence trying for the outside of George into La Source. Lee Findlay having a look to the inside line to see if he can take either of these two. He's going to get a much better run than Lawrence, heading down towards Eau Rouge and slots into 3rd place. He's not going to try it down the inside. We've seen Raikkonen and Webber do this. What a move if you can pull it off. We know George is willing to defend through there. They're taking whatever bit of track they need to. Lawrence now on the inside. There's about 5 cars battling here. They've got nearly 4 abreast heading down. And oh, there's been a big accident. Lawrence has been spun round completely there. He's just about managed to avoid hitting anyone else. Somehow getting away without retiring either. That was a huge shunt. So much going on there. I'm not sure what happened. He was battling hard with George, Lee Findlay, and then obviously Flip Flop Fish and Westy getting involved in that as well. We'll see if there's any damage on these cars. These two look unscathed, and Lee Findlay is now up into third place. Flip Flop Fish all over the back of George at the moment. And Lawrence has retired from the session, so I said I'd be surprised if the sprint race ended with no retirements. If it was wet, it turns out even if it's dry. 2 drivers out so far as Flip Flop Fish tries to go around the outside of George. At the moment, he's determined to get on the podium here today. Really the cork in the bottle at the moment. Flip Flop Fish is just going to try and use the momentum to get a better exit out of Stavilo and Paul Frere. Is he able to catch him up before Blanchimont and try and go round the outside? George just sticking to the middle of the road. I'm not sure that was one defensive move there, but we'll have to wait and see. He's really holding up Flip Flop Fish here, and Westy, he fancies a go at them here. So George, he's going to have the outside. Is Westy going to be late enough on the brakes to maybe take 2 of them here? No, he is not. That's compromised Flip Flop's line though, as Michael tries to get on the inside of these. Jon Palainen in 7th, 3rd to 8th, really close at the moment. George really holding up the rest of the field, which he's entitled to. He's battling for position as Flip Flop Fish takes 3rd position, as Westy nearly goes into the back of George there. That's going to leave him vulnerable on the run down towards O'Rouge and Radion. See Lee Findlay streaking away in 2nd place now. He's going to try and catch up Josh, but I think it's going to be a very difficult task to do that. DRS is enabled, of course, down the Kemmel Straight. That could leave Flip Flop Fish a bit of a sitting duck, and that's why he's having to go defensive so early. It's so powerful here at Spa. There's contact between the two of them. George is just going to have to run off the circuit as Westy's now trying to take advantage of that and take 4th position from the Prema car, and he has just about managed to do that. And now Michael Pace is looking down the inside as George, he doesn't know when he's beaten, does he, in this race? He retakes that 4th position. He is fighting so hard to try and get the best possible result. He got his first points last time out with 8th place, and it looks as though he's going to be in the points at the moment. The important thing just is to be, if you can escape from him, you look to be safe. Josh, 6 seconds ahead of Lee Findlay. He's 2.5 seconds ahead of Flip Flop Fish, who's 1.5 seconds behind this train of cars, which sees Droftas go down the inside of Michael. He's able to hold that position. Michael's gone off circuit slightly there and rejoining. That's forced Jon Palainen off, so Univirtuosi getting away without any damage. He stays in 8th position. But Westy now in 5th. He tried last time on the inside into the bus stop. We've got a yellow flag as Michael has retired. Is that at the same place where Hibilu went off? I believe it is. And Dench having to take big avoiding action, but that promotes him into the points. He's in 8th. Paulie Orange still running around in 9th with that broken front wing end plate. And with all the chaos we've seen going on here, it wouldn't surprise me too much if he sneaks into the points here, as Westy still all over the back of George. He's got it badly wrong coming out of the bus stop chicane, and that is 4th place for Westy, and he has DRS to just make it a bit easier to stay ahead of the Prema car, who's now going to have Droftas all over the back of him. Might be the wisest move here to just stay behind. You'll have DRS anyway. Both of them will have DRS because of Westy just up ahead, but the double toe could be what Droftas needs. But you lose that downforce in the dirty air as you saw the car getting light at the top of Radion. Westy's going to have to go defensive very early on here, similar to what Flip Flop Fish did last time around. George not able to go late enough on the brakes into Lecombe. Westy's outbraked himself. They both have. Is Droftas going to be able to do the cutback here around the outside at the exit of Lecombe? They're going to be side by side heading down to Bruxelles, but in the end, Droftas catches the grass slightly and has to remain in 6th position for now. Bet Josh is so relieved on lap 1 that he got away from all this. 6 seconds ahead, looking to shoe in for his 4th victory of the season in F2. No one else has won more than 2. He's been fantastic in what is only his 8th race, of course. Westy's now escaping from these guys. He's in 4th. You've got Lee Findlay 2nd. That will be his 5th podium in a row. A fantastic result. He's 7th from 8 races. Him, like I said earlier on, Lee Findlay, Westy and Josh have really been the class of the field since they've joined us. George running off circuit, trying to defend from Droftas the best he can. They're tapping once again. I don't think George is making himself too many friends here. Don't want him to annoy these drivers too much, otherwise I might not bother watching us on Saturday. Hopefully they do, as now Droftas is going to try and go round the outside into the bus stops again. George just about leaving him a car width. Droftas trying to take advantage of that, and in the end George nearly gone around. Jompalainen has managed to get ahead of him, and Jompalainen is going to get a much better exit than Droftas, who was all over the place on the run out of the bus stops. Jompalainen taking 2 cars in one go there. He is now up into 5th. Droftas just holding on to 6th position. He really seems to be struggling on traction in the Chiru, and George now down to 7th, and Denge not too far behind the Prema car. We are on the final lap of this race, and this is going to be the big battle. Jompalainen pushing really hard. We've got a yellow flag in sector 3. That is for, I'm not sure that could be for, maybe for Alan, who's just ran off slightly, as Droftas and George getting past Jompalainen down on the run to Lacombe, and George trying to get past Droftas as well, and he's done so. 2 cars in one move, and in the end Jompalainen managing to retake 6th position as Droftas is round into the barrier he goes. That's going to allow Andenge past him. He's gone all the way across the circuit, and Paulie Orange is going to say thank you very much. He takes 8th position as well. Maybe things will calm down a bit now. We'll have to wait and see. George still in 5th position. Jompalainen 6th, and Denge, he's took advantage of all this carnage to work his way back up the field. He might still get himself another top 5 finish here. It's looking all nice and serene for the front 4 cars. Now, let's see what happens in the final few corners for these drivers, as George working his heart out to try and get his best finish of the season. He managed 8th in the feature race. Will he be able to finish in 5th in the sprint as he runs wide there? That might be just what Jompalainen needs. We'll have to wait and see. This is going to be very close. Josh is going to come across the line to take the victory, as Jompalainen and George side by side through Blanchimont. George has run off the circuit, but he's going to have the inside line of all 3 of these heading into the chicane, and Denge has gone into the back of Jompalainen. That's forced him wide. George trying to take the curb and get that 5th place. It's Lee Findlay 2nd, Flip Flop 3rd, Westy 4th, and Denge crossing the line in 5th. Jompalainen 6th, George 7th, Paulie Orange in 8th will be the final points position. We'll see Droftas, YBR and Alan come through with 9th, 10th and 11th after their various incidents. But he got the lead before we got to turn 1, and it never looked in doubt after that. And Josh is the victor here today. It's another 2nd position for Lee Findlay. Been a fantastic weekend for him. He will be leading the championship with quite some margin, I imagine. And now Flip Flop Fish getting a 3rd position, doing his championship chances no harm whatsoever. And Westy 4th, and Denge 5th, Jompalainen 6th, George in 7th. He really wanted that win today. Maybe, just maybe you could argue, fought a bit too hard for it. We did see the incident with Lawrence. Didn't quite saw what caused that. There were about 6 or 7 cars fighting for the same piece of tarmac. One driver who didn't have to fight for anyone, for any tarmac in that race, was your race winner. His 4th win of the season. It is Josh taking the victory. Lee Findlay 2nd place, and Flip Flop Fish rounding out the podium in 3rd position. As we'll get the rest of the results coming up now from that race. There we see the top 3. Josh getting the fastest lap as well. Westy 4th, and Denge 5th. Jompalainen in 6th. George getting some more points in 7th. Paulie Orange salvaging a point in 8th. YBR 9th. Droftas 10th. Was looking good maybe for a top 5 before he had that spin. Alan 11th. Michael Pace, Lawrence and Hibilu retiring. So if we look at what that does for the points at this weekend, we see Lee Findlay there getting 41 points, 15 points more than anyone else got. Westy getting the next best on 26. What this does for the championship situation is it will put Lee Findlay at the top of the standings. Now, he was on 87 points before this round. He's now going to be on 128 points, and Denge will actually drop behind Flip Flop Fish as well. So Flip Flop Fish will now be in second place in the championship on 112 points. So Lee Findlay taking a bit of an advantage here over everyone else at the end of this race. Josh recovering from the incident in the feature race, got a few points in that put him in a good starting position, and he got the win in the fastest lap that we saw there as well. But there'll be a few drivers, I feel, tonight who might think it was a missed opportunity. Strategy was the name of the game in the feature race. If you could keep your wet tyres in a good enough position and not have to pit, it was a big advantage. And a lot of that sprint race was just getting away from some of the slower cars that started nearer the head of the field. So we saw that is what Josh managed to do. Got ahead of George on turn 1 and sprinted away to take the victory. F2 will be back next week at Italy. In terms of F1, there'll be more information whether there will be a PC exhibition race on Friday soon. Make sure to check out social media for that. Myself and George will be back on the comms back regardless on Saturday for the Italian Grand Prix in the PS4 F1 Championship. Just like to quickly thank our sponsors for this, MIXT Energy. Check out the link below for all their products, and remember to use the code FOR2020 to get a 10% discount. You can also find the link for Player One Coffee down in the description as well and get your exclusive coupon. But from myself, in terms of F2 action, I will see you next time out on next Tuesday in Italy for what I'm sure will be another dramatic, unpredictable round in these F2 cars. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.